Hey there, Nick here. In this video, we're going to go over how to securely mount build time secrets with Docker and Docker Compose. We're going to do this in two different ways using both environment variables as well as files in case you have a config file that you need to download some private resource. By the way, this blog post right now is hosted on localhost. By the time that you watch this video, it will be available on my site. I'll leave a link to that one in the description. Although I will say we are going to be bouncing around between going over this blog post and running some commands in the terminal to see how it all works. There's quite a lot of content here that we're going to go through. I wrote it out ahead of time to save you a little bit of time here so I don't need to ramble, as well as just organize my thoughts here. I don't want to forget anything on video. So yeah, there's a couple of different use cases for wanting build time secrets here, but one of the most primary ones, at least I found in practice while doing contract work over the years here, is wanting to install a package from a private repository, right? This could be something like a private Git repo or a private package repository such as a self-hosted version of PyPy, RubyGems, or whatever package repo you might be using for whatever programming language that you might be using. This also applies to downloading and installing commercial packages where you may have an access token like a commercial license to install a package from their private repo. Now, the basic idea here is you really only need that secret key or token to obtain access to the private repo, right? Once the packages have been downloaded and installed, or you cloned your private Git repo, there's really no reason to keep that secret lying around there in your Docker image. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can actually solve this problem here, but some of them may result in you accidentally or knowingly permanently including your build time secrets in your image, which really isn't too ideal. So let's actually go over the insecure way here, and then we'll go over how to do it with mounted secrets shortly afterwards here. So if you're just trying to solve this problem, you might reach for using something like a build argument, which totally would solve the problem, but it is pretty insecure here, as we're going to see here pretty soon. So here's a very basic Docker file, by the way. We're using a Debian base image here. We're just referencing a new build argument that we've decided to name here access token. It could be named whatever you want here. Then for this run instruction here, I just echoed out some commands so it actually runs, because this command is probably not going to exist within your image here. But yeah, this private install script really could just be a replacement for, pip installing something, bundle installing something, git cloning something, whatever your command happens to be that needs to access the token, right? And in this case, this little script here, which doesn't exist, by the way, it just has an access token flag where we just pass in the build argument there. And then the idea there is, yeah, cool. Okay, so when we build our Docker image, we just pass in the build argument here, access token, these names are lining up here. And then we also just exported that secret over here, right? The access token, some super secret value, right? Which is then passed in here. And then when we build our image, we have access to the access token here, and then we are available to run whatever we need. Cool. And if this is a bigger project or something like that, you can absolutely use Docker Compose here to, handle all of your build arguments. You can even have this exported environment variable in an env file, then use variable interpolation in your Docker Compose file. And then, you don't need to manually export things and everything just works. Now, we covered a lot of ground here just on build arguments. I've done quite a few videos in the past about Docker. I'm pretty sure my DockerCon video went over all things like this, so feel free to check that one out. I'll leave a card to that. But yeah, this seems pretty reasonable, right? I mean, we've added the build time secret. We've used it now over here in our run instruction. Yeah, now our image has the private packages installed. But the problem here, though, is that this run layer right here actually contains your access token in its plain text evaluated form. So yeah, if you were to build this image here, then you can actually see that the token exists right here in the output. So let's actually build this image and see how it works. So I'm just going to copy paste some stuff here, jump into a terminal. I've already have the Docker image open here. Nothing super special here, but let me just go back here and copy this one because I believe tmux yank just killed my clipboard. There we go. And then we'll go back to here. Done. And then I should paste this one. Cool. And then we see some output, right? And yeah, same output basically is what you saw in the blog post. Maybe some of the times are a little bit different, not important. But we can see right here, our super secret value 123 is just sitting there. Not too good, right? So let's go back to the blog post here and we scroll down. Yeah, I mean, we just saw it in plain text there, but you might think like, well, okay, cool. Like, I don't know, if I ran this on my dev box or something and it's just output to plain text here, that's not a big deal. But, keep in mind too, like if you're running this in a CI environment, saving your logs, then it's saved there, right? But actually it's a little bit worse than that. It's not just the output that, we are seeing this in. So you can actually do a Docker image history here on your image that we built here. We called it my image, by the way, in case you missed that reference here. I don't think I called that one out, but yeah, it's built like that. We can actually see the value is right here. So let's actually run this command and see how things work. All right. Cool. And yeah, there's our value right there. So that means basically if you were to build this image in CI or your dev box, it doesn't matter where, push it up to your Docker registry, and then someone else were to pull it down, it's like, well, that super secret value is right there. It's basically, kind of comparable to committing a secret to version control. Although in this case, instead of it being, on GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or something like that, it's in your Docker registry. So yeah, this really demonstrates that your secret is permanently stored in your image. Yeah, and I go on to mention here a little bit differently. If you're self-hosting things everywhere, you might think like, well, that's kind of not the end of the world, right? But in my opinion, right, it's really, really worth it to protect your secrets. Like, what if you started using some security vulnerability scanning tool and it scans your image? Well, now they have access to your secret, and needlessly copying around secrets just makes it really easy to accidentally leak something by accident. So don't feel too bad though if you've done something like this in the past, years before mounted secrets were available. I absolutely did the above here. I knew it was an issue long term, but I don't know, it was an easy solution, right? And at least it avoided committing secrets to your Git history, right? So this secret here is just sitting here in exported in your shell, or maybe in an env file that's not commit to version control. So at the very least, at least it wasn't in your Git history here. But yeah, also whenever I did this in the past here, I really only used it for private repo access, which was basically just like a personal access token. So that's easy enough to reroll if it really got leaked. But yeah, nowadays we can actually have the best of both worlds here, ease of use and it being secure. And by the way, before we go into some solutions here, it is worth pointing out that you must have BuildKit enabled. Now, if you're using Docker version 23 or above, which by the way was released in February 2023, and this is on any platform, then it's enabled by default. I forgot exactly when it's been available to choose, with manually turning it on, but as long as you're using a reasonably new version of Docker and it's not completely ancient like many, many years ago, then you will be able to enable it in a few different ways here. Docker's documentation covers that. We're not going to go over that in detail in this video here. Basically, you can just set BuildKit to 1 when you do your Docker commands here, or you can set this daemon config and you are good to go. So cool, let's start jumping into some solutions here. So here's a slightly modified Docker file from the above example. We're still using Debian Slim here as our base image. Notice there's no build argument now, but instead we are doing something kind of interesting with our run instruction. So we have this new mount flag here that we passed in, and the type is going to be secret. The ID is access token, and then down here our command is the same here, but we're referencing this access token in maybe a strange way or a new way or something you may not be used to seeing here. So yeah, let's go over some of these bullet points to break down some components of the new things that were introduced here. So yeah, instead of using an argument here, we're using the mount flag with our run instruction. It is definitely worth pointing out here too that this secret will only be available for this specific run instruction. So if we added a second run instruction below here, we just couldn't access this mounted secret here. We would have to also supply the mount flag here if we wanted to do it again. Basically, it's not going to fall through to the rest of your Docker file by default. Then for type secret here, that just says we want our mount type to be secret. There's quite a few other ones here in Docker's documentation. We're not going to go over that in this video here. I just want to showcase that you can have like cache and tempfs and secret, SSH, etc. Of course, we're going to go over secret in this one, but the other ones, not so much here. So yeah, let's go over the next bit here, which is the ID to be access token. So this lets us name our secret anything we want, as long as it's a valid name here. We're going to be referencing this one later in a couple of different spots. This name will need to line up, and I'll go over that once we go over how to build this thing here. Once we have our mount set up here, Docker is going to make that available in /run/secrets/ whatever the ID is for the mount that you set up. In this case, it's access token, but again, we could name that whatever you want. It's very important that these two line up though. This file here has the contents of our secret. Cool. So then we can build our images like we did before, right? We can export this. I've already done that. So let me just grab this command here and we're going to build this one. And then we'll go over a little bit more details here. But yeah, we can see right away when we built this image here, notice how the super secret 123 value, whatever it was, it's not here, right? There's no seeing that in the output here, which is already a good sign. Cool. So let's go back to here and see things. But yeah, I will point out here for the command itself, I don't want to forget that. When it comes to building this, we're no longer passing in build arg as a flag. Instead, we are putting in the secret flag here. And in this case, we have ID equals access token. Again, it's super important that this lines up with this, right? This is the secret that we're supplying at build time. And this is us reading that secret in at build time and then doing something, in this case is getting the value of it here. Rest of this stuff is the same, right? We have this new, or not new, but we have this tag here for my image. I should mention that, yeah, we're going to be referencing that image throughout this video in quite a few spots here. So yeah, cool. That's basically that. And I will want to point out too that you can add more options here to this. Like for example, let's say that you have an environment variable that is not named access token, or maybe you have some use case where you don't want this to be named access token. You want the ID to be something different than the environment variable. Docker does let you configure this as well. For example, you can explicitly pass in this environment property, name this, access token or whatever environment variable name that you want here. And then the ID could be anything. I put X here because it's like super concise here. But yeah, now you have access to ID X here in your Docker file, but you're actually reading from an environment variable named access token. So yeah, feel free to, change or swap things around if you have some use case where you don't want them to be the same. Personally, I tend to avoid using env here because yeah, in this case, if the ID is just defined like this, it will look for an environment variable with the same name. And I find that same name convention to be pretty intuitive. And I haven't really come across any use cases where that didn't work, at least not for me here. But yeah, notice how the secret itself is not output anywhere. That is a good sign. But let's actually check the history just to make sure that it's actually not there. So let me just rerun that history command from before here. We have the same image name. I just built it with the same one. But yeah, we can see here that there are no secrets added here. Now, we're present in the visible view state here. But you might think like, well, that's a ... What about after that command? Because that's Nick. That's really where the secret would be, right? Actually, this is pretty interesting, and I just learned this the other day. You can actually use this one flag called no truncate or no trunk. And in this case, it actually will output everything here, and we can see like, yep, cool, it's keeping me honest. This is actually not output anywhere in the history, so we don't see our string anywhere, which is very nice. I know it's a little crazy to look at on video here because it's wrapping to so many lines because the font size is so big. But yeah, cool. That proves or demonstrates here that it's not just, sitting there in our Docker image ready to be used at a later date, which is exactly what we want here. And yeah, I just wanted to say here, maybe you think I'm lying here, but yeah, the truncated version shows everything we need. But you might be thinking now, it's like, well, does it actually work? Because we sort of have this throwaway echo command that's not really demonstrating like using the actual secret here, right? So how can we be sure that things are really working? So I did set up this little Docker file here. I don't suggest ever using this Docker file for anything other than local testing to make sure that your mounted secrets are actually working. But this is a pretty quick way to verify that things are truly working. So yeah, it's going to completely defeat the purpose of using the secret mount here. And it's kind of ridiculous, but it works. So let's go to here and we'll just play around with this and see how it works. I'll just read it off over here, right? So nothing really changed that much here. We're still dealing with mounted secrets, right? There's our access token, etc. But here I'm just like catting out that actual access token value, redirecting it out to a new file like temp, like don't do this normally. And then we're just overriding what this Debian image does by default here, which is going to cat out our secret. So yeah, totally defeats the purpose, but a great way to demonstrate that, look, during this one run instruction here, we actually have access to the token, and then, it would be perceived here that whatever command that needs it will actually have it available. So let's go to the blog post here and just rebuild our image here. Yep, I'll just copy paste this one, cool. And down here, there we go. So it's now rebuilding this image here, nice. And then, yeah, we can actually just run the container here and see the super secret value. So let's just do that real quick. And there we go. So the container is actually being run here. Again, we named it my image. I just used the RM flags here so the container doesn't stick around after it's stopped. But we can see our super secret value of 123. And just as a reminder here, if I echo out our access token, and yep, I'm not using squigglies here because whatever, it's just a throwaway on the terminal here. We do see that this was passed in at build time as a secret. And then here it is being actually used in the container, which is nice because, yeah, we did this like crazy thing here just to demonstrate that things really, really work. So yeah, it's really being set here. As an experiment, you can try catting out run secrets, access secret in your CMD, and you'll be happy to know that it's not accessible. You also can't use mount with CMD anyways, which makes sense because mounting is available for run. So basically what I was saying there is, if we went back to here, yeah, you can't just cat this out directly here in CMD. If you're wondering why I didn't do that one, like why redirect it to a different file, if I just did something like this, right? Like we can go back and rebuild this, and this is actually going to not work here. Yeah, just because that file just doesn't exist. So it only exists due to us actually explicitly using the mount there, which is a nice thing to see on video because it really does confirm that, this thing is not available just in the image like willy-nilly. No, it's very explicit on how it's being accessed there. So yeah, like what if your tool actually expects you to set an environment variable? So for example, in our example, we did this, right? We had that like private install script, throwaway thing, whatever. And then we, had this little access token flag, and then we're just like catting out the value there. So it's like essentially, providing this as the value to this flag here, and then your script would do whatever it needs. But, let's say that you actually need to set an environment variable instead. And good news there is like, we don't really need to do anything different or Docker specific here. Like any shell command, if you want to just make an environment variable accessible to whatever script that you're running, yeah, you can just do this, right? You can just be like, okay, cool. Access token is the same exact cat thing that we did before here, but now it's just being passed like this right before you call your script. So that's that. And then you can also make it look a little bit nicer by formatting it like this in a Docker file. There's nothing really to rerun or build or whatever. I just wanted to demonstrate you can do this here. We can just like break things out with backslashes, put them on different lines, right? So there's our mount setup here. There's our environment variable for the access token. And then we just pop this over into a different line here to run our script to do whatever we want. This could be a bundle install command, if you have something like a commercial license for Sidekick or something like that. But what about multiple secrets? That could be kind of interesting, right? What if you have more than one? The good news is like Docker has us covered here. And yeah, so we can just start mounting in multiple secrets, right? Each have their own unique ID here. And then we just cat them out like before. We have the key, we have the token, and then yeah, cool. Everything is good to go. And then if you were to want to build this one, which I'm not going to bother wasting your time on this one, but yeah, you can just, export both of your keys like this. And then you can just like pass them in on the command line using Docker image build. They each have their own individual secret flag here. This one is for the key. This one is for the token. So if you have 3 secrets, all you'd have to do is add a new line here, add a new line here, add a new flag there, make sure it's exported and you're good to go. Of course, you can source this in from an env file if you start to get a lot of them, but then you might start thinking like, well, what about Docker Compose? And we're going to get to that pretty soon here, but I just want to go over one more example before we jump into Docker Compose here. Like, what about actually mounting in files, not environment variables? This could be handy if you have something like a PyRC file or some type of config file that has sensitive API keys or tokens that are used for a command. So PyRC file is used by PyPy. Let's say you want to publish a package for Python. Yeah, it's going to put this file on your home directory in there. And then within there, you're going to have some private tokens here that you wouldn't want to just have lingering around in a Docker image if you have a Docker image set up to handle all of that. So in that case, it's actually not too much different than environment variables. So in this case, we have the mount type secret. And in this case, we're also passing in the ID of PyRC. Again, the ID could be whatever you want here. But now, we actually need to supply a target path, which is going to be where this file is going to exist on disk throughout just this run command here. And, I have this little echo command to run twine, upload this, whatever. This is like very, very Python specific here. This is a tool you can use to build and upload your packages to PyPy or any other package repository here. But yeah, I just wanted to put like a little end-to-end example where you may actually want to use a config file, but there's other cases where you might need to use a config file too, depending on whatever you're doing, right? So in this case, yep, you can just build it like this here. I don't want to do this one on video and cut it out because it actually has my real tokens in here. But I mean, the output is very similar to what we saw before here, right? We're just doing a build. We're doing a secret here. Although there is one very important thing to call out here. In this case, we actually are passing in a different property here, source, like src. And this is actually going to be the config file or whatever file it happens to be that you want to mount in at build time from your Docker host. So on my machine right now in my terminal, if I were to, go through the motions of running all of this one, then this is going to evaluate to /home/nic/ and go and actually get my real PyRC file. So, this is a great way for you to build things and yeah, securely put files into an image at build time just for a very specific run instruction to, let's say, upload a Python package or whatever you need to do here. And yeah, if you want to confirm that one works, we can actually go and do the same thing that we did before up here, like wherever that was, just like catting out that file there, but I'm not going to do that one because again, that has like my real actual tokens and things like that. But yeah, you can also mount in multiple files in the same exact way that we mounted multiple environment variables. Just make sure that the ID and source are unique for both of them, right? You'll be passing in multiple different secret flags here with multiple different IDs, multiple different sources, and then likely also you're going to have a different target most likely for whatever the 2 or 3, 5, 10, whatever, however many files that you have. But that's it. Cool. Okay. So now let's just go over Docker Compose a bit here, because if you're working in a larger project, you might have a few different secrets here, and you're probably using Docker Compose, right? So here's a couple of different examples to convert both of the examples above into Docker Compose's format, basically environment variables and files. But yeah, let's actually just start with the Docker Compose environment variable example here. So in this case, this is going to be an example Docker file. We're actually going to be running these ones in terminals to see their output here. But going back to what we did earlier, again, I'm doing this crazy thing here where we just want to see the output to make sure things actually work here. But yeah, let me just go and jump into the terminal here. I'll just replace what we had up here, pop this one in. And do I have a Docker Compose YAML file filled out? Looks like I do. Nice. Okay. So whatever. We're going to jump to that in a second when we need to here. But yeah, so we have a Docker Compose YAML file to set up our secrets. By the way, before we get into all the details here, very, very important that this secrets property is indented into the build property here. Because if this were, outdented one, like if it were adjacent to build, this is just not going to work. It's a very subtle thing. If you're just working with this for the first time, this is definitely an area where you might start seeing some errors in the terminal and just be like, what the hell? Like, why isn't it working? And then it's like, yep, you just need to indent that into build. But yeah, the real takeaway here is basically at the bottom of this file here, where we are just defining a secrets property, not too dissimilar to maybe using volumes. You probably have done that in the past where you had like a volumes property and then some stuff. And then, whatever service that needed the volume, you would reference it basically. And, this pattern is basically very similar, right? We have a secrets property. We are defining secrets that have these different names, access key, access token. And then we are just defining those secrets over here in whatever service that we need. And then in this case, just like before, there's a couple of different ways we can do this, right? We can have environment variables, we can have files, etc. So in this case, this is Docker Compose's way of saying like, okay, cool, this is going to be an environment variable. And here is the name of the environment variable that we want to read from. This would be expected to be exported into current shell, or as a convenience too, and we're going to see this in a second here, an env file can actually hold these and things are just going to work. You don't even need to do variable interpolation here, like Docker will just pick it up. So pretty basic, pretty nice, pretty easy. So let's actually go and play around with this a little bit here. So in this case, by the way, I guess before we jump into running it, lastly, this is an optional thing where you can create the env file. And then, I should mention too that the dictionary key name is actually the name of the secret. So we mentioned that this is going to be the environment variable name that's going to be read from your current shell or the env file. But yeah, this is actually going to end up being literally the ID that you end up referencing inside of your Docker file over here. So it's important that, this value, and this value all line up. And cool. Okay. So yeah, you could create that env file. Docker Compose is going to look it up. If not, you would need to export these things to your shell. So since I do have an env file set up, I'm just going to copy paste this one and we should see it'll work. Hopefully. So yeah, things are built and then we can see something secure here and super secret value 123. And we don't see them here, which is nice. And let me just open up that env file just so you can see here. In this case, we have access key, something secure, and then access token, super secret value 123. That's what we see here. And the reason it's in that type of formatting here is because in the Docker file, I just set up this little thing here. We have a couple of different mounted secrets. We have the key, we have the token. Then I'm just echoing them out here, just like we did before. Put a little pipe symbol to separate them a little nicely here. And then, I'm doing the thing that we shouldn't do here, which is just catting it out just to make sure we can actually see things work. So that's actually pretty nice, right? And again, let's just say for argument's sake here that the env file didn't exist. I'm just going to name it env2 here. If I were to rerun Docker Compose build, let's just go with no cache here just to make sure it's doing a fresh build. And then we were to do our Docker Compose run. What did I name this one? Like my service or something like that, I'm pretty sure. I ended that one before. But we can see here that one of those got exported, but the other one didn't. And I would bet you that I just probably, we had one of those exported to our shell before when we ran the commands earlier, but the other one did not. So that's why the token is available here, but the key is not. So we can actually demonstrate that even further. If I just unset access token, right? That's basically making this no longer available in my current shell. And then we just rebuild here and then rerun. I would expect both of these now are going to be empty, and that's exactly what we see here. But, if we just rename this back to env, and then we do the same exact thing, then both of them are going to be filled up. Hopefully. They will. Yep, cool. There we go. Nice. Okay. So that handles dealing with environment variables. This is probably the common case, right? In most cases or, some scenarios there. Let's go over accessing files. So yeah, let's just go back to this Docker file that we had before. This is literally the exact same one, unmodified here with the little echo twine example here, referencing this. And by the way, this container is running by root by default. So the home directory for root would be here. This could maybe be changed to home/python/whatever, whatever things you may have set up there if you're running your container as a non-root user. It is worth pointing that one out here. But yeah, let's go to this compose.yaml file here. And the only real difference here is, this is the same, right? The only real difference is near the bottom here, where instead of using environment that we just saw up here, right, we used environment. Now we are actually just using file. And in this case, this is going to be the local file path that is set up on your Docker host here. It's very similar to what we saw when we weren't using Docker Compose. So let me just pop this in and we'll just replace what I had before in here. All right, done. And everything is set up here, same type of secrets, it's within build, etc. And yeah, cool. Now we can actually just run this and see it work. So let me go, I know my clipboard just got killed, but whatever. I'll just build it manually and then run it manually, same thing. But yeah, let's do that. and it's going to pop us right into a shell here as root because, in our Docker file here, we don't have our own CMD defined. So this is actually the default action for the Debian image here, which is to put us into a shell prompt there. Cool. And then, there's nothing actually to see here. I just wanted to mention here, but you can always override a CMD and cat the file out to confirm it actually works. I'm not going to do that here, but feel free to do that on your own if you want here. And by the way, that's basically going to wrap it up for this video. It wasn't as long as I expected. Half an hour though, still pretty long. But yeah, this is basically a cover, or just a couple of different common use cases. Feel free to check out Docker's documentation on build secrets. There's all sorts of other things that you can do here as well. Yeah, maybe I'll do some future videos on things like mounting SSH keys. Although I will mention that I really haven't used that much because typically I'm using personal access tokens for images that need to clone repos, which in this case, the environment variable approach that we covered in this video will demonstrate and make that solution available. So yeah, this is now meta stuff, the video, it's not done yet, whatever. But yeah, if you have any questions about any of this, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up because it really, really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.